Okay, let's continue. The next example is pretty similar. It's just a more dynamic version of it. Um, Sometimes there's basically two ways of loading the database driver into memory. One is not into memory, but to define which database you're going to use. One is at, we'll go back here, compilation time, where we are specifically stating in the compiled code what database driver to use. That's referred to as early binding. The compiler will resolve that and make sure we have that database available to us. And the other way of doing it is with something called late binding, where we put the driver in a string, like I'm doing here, and then I use this class.forName, pass in the string, and say new instance. This is called late binding. It will be resolved at runtime. The benefit to that is that you can switch drivers without recompiling the program. So if you want to be dynamic enough to switch between, let's say, Oracle and MySQL and SQL Server, this would allow you to do it. The drawback is it's slower. Okay, one other thing we're going to do here, we're going to have the same query. This time it says select star from customer, which will be everything. We're going to execute the query. We're also going to look into something called metadata, result set metadata, which is a class that gets you data about the query you just executed. And there's some information. What we're going to use first is column count, which means the number of columns that were in the query. We don't know because there's an asterisk there. So without going to the table to look at it, we don't know. But if we look at the metadata for the query, we can find out the number of columns in the query. We're going to do that then, use that then to do something very dynamic. And we'll change this statement a couple of times, and you'll see, how it can possibly work. We'll see a couple of different possibilities. What we're going to do, this for loop is going to loop through those columns and using the metadata, print out the column names. Right? The question is database stuff going to be on our final? No, it's not. Only chapters 1 through 10 are on your final. This is an extra. Then that prints out the column headings. Then we're going to loop through all the rows that were found again and use that same for loop, but this time we're going to print out all the column values. The catch area is pretty similar, except we have one extra exception that can happen called class not found exception. That's because we're waiting until runtime to tell it what driver to use, and it could be that the driver just doesn't exist at runtime, and that will cause a class not found exception. And let's see, we're going to call this one list customers 2. This should work. Okay, it did it, except what happened? What's happening? We're missing something here. Oh, we need to do a new line character after each row, don't we? Okay. So we just want to do system.out.print line. There it is. Now we could try and get the query from our users instead. Prompt them for it. And we will in just a minute. Then it becomes very dynamic. I'm just going to say, make a very simple prompt, SQL, like that. So it's no longer the customer. I can just run this. And I've got a couple of different options. I could look at, what were some of the tables we looked on Tuesday? Select star from titles. I get that output. And of course we could just stay in here. Yeah, we could change this a little bit more. Let's do this here. Check this out. And I can say, I think it'll be while query not equal to null. Should make this really dynamic. Yeah, we don't want to do that. Alright, so let's see how this works. So if I do cancel, it ends the program. But if I do this, and again I type in select star from authors, I get all my authors down there and it prompts me for another query. And then I can do another one. Select star from titles, another output. Select star from customers. Right? So I can do whatever I want in there. I could say select star from what is that there? It looks like titles, where title is like the %, and I get that query output. So it becomes very dynamic at this point. Created almost like a little query thing, and we'll see how we can do some dynamic stuff like that as well. In fact, we'll probably reuse that one. Okay. So that's that example. Come down. Now the next thing we're going to look at, and this one is actually adding a customer to our table, and we're going to do something called a prepared statement, a PS or prepared statement. And the prepared statement is just where the SQL statement is compiled in advance. Let's just create this one in NetBeans so we can see it. Okay, so we'll go over this one. This is creating what we call a prepared statement, and it looks like it's going to do an insert. Here's so all this stuff is the same, basically. It's looking for stuff to be entered at the command line, 4 arguments at the command line. And I think we talked about this already. About entering stuff at the command line, which we could do. We'll probably have to modify this since we are in NetBeans. A little bit. Yeah, because this isn't going to quite work. What we can do, let's try and check this out. Just do something like this instead. We'll just say, we've got to give it values. So we can just say no, 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 no. So it's going to pass values. So this will work either from the command prompt or elsewhere. And so all we probably want to do here is we can say if let's say L name is null, then we're going to assume that all of them need values, and none of them have values, and all of them need values. So we're going to say L name is equal to, I'm going to prompt each one. It's kind of a pain, but this will be last name. And then we're also going to have, what else do we have here? Oh, that's it. Okay. Let's go. So this will be the username will default to root. Null password, and that will be null. So that means the last name, we'll have to prompt for the last name and first name. Okay, so here's the insert statement as a string. You see 2 question marks there. The question marks are essentially placeholders for values that will be substituted in later on. And let's just get rid of that. I'm just going to put, well, we'll see. Yeah, placeholders. Prepared statement is a type of statement that is going to hold a prepared result. And prepared statements have benefits over a one-off SQL statement in that this insert statement is what we would say compiled once on the database and it's reusable. which would be different from what we call a more dynamic statement. So again, we're going to register our driver. And actually, I don't even think we need this guy. Oh, I guess it does want it. All right. It's not going to use it, but anyway. Setting the auto commit to false is setting it off. Databases have what they call an auto commit, which means as soon as a transaction is executed, it's automatically saved. It's kind of like the difference between a hard save and a soft save. Prepare the statement. This basically compiles this insert statement up here. And prepared statement.setString replaces each one of these question marks up here with the value there. So the first question mark will get replaced with L name, which is the last name, and the second question mark will get replaced with F name or the first name. Execute basically executes that statement, and then connection.commit commits it. The rest of this is the same. It's just closing the database connection out. So let's go ahead and run this. One of the first things we could do right here is I can run this. It's going to put it into customer and just say select star from customer. Now we see that there, and we see that through Adams, Benson, Diaz, Edwards, Franklin. There's no K, so maybe we'll put someone with a K in there. Let's try that. Okay, last name, someone with a K. Last name with a K. Gee, can you think of one offhand? Any famous person with a K? How about Knott? Don Knott. Rest in peace. Okay, so it says that it executed successfully. You don't get much of a message there, just that it executed successfully. So let's go ahead and run this one again. And again, I'll say select star from customer. And cancel that. We're done. Yep, there he is, Don Knott. Everyone see him? So we added him to the database with an insert statement. Okay, any questions on this example so far?